Hello, world singers. My name is Brooke.
And I'm Tyler.
And this is
Cosmere
Cosmere Conversations.
Welcome back, everyone. So good to be here for another one of Hoid's parables. This is guaranteed, the story that began this entire little subcategorization of Hoid's tales throughout the Cosmere. We needed to go back and really look at the moon story.
There have been so many theories tossed around on the interwebs about this story, and as I sat down to take notes for this long-awaited episode, I was like, this is it. I'm going to go through all of the theories. I'm going to figure this story out. I'm going to come out the other side with answers. Gosh dang it.
Wow.
And I did not.
Nope, nothing. We found we have no new information.
I definitely left more confused than I began, which was disappointing. But I think this episode is still going to be a really good one.
Exactly. So dive into the rabbit hole that is the moon story, the unanswerable riddle that Hoid has put out there into the Cosmere universe, spawning so many theories that even our excellent researcher could not divine their way through. And
it's a tangled web.
Let us know if you have some answers to this or any of the other stories that we've gone over lately.
Thoughts, theories, queries, give them to us.
We would like to begin, though, with an overview and a step into the astronomical plane.
Yes, of course, with a story about the moon, we need to start with the planetary system of Roshar.
This is great because I took one semester of astronomy, and so I feel like a real expert.
So qualified.
Exactly. No, mainly I just like looking...
I also took one semester of astronomy.
Back in the good old days. Mainly, I want to kind of give a perspective on Roshar. We're so often talking about the planet Roshar and the characters on Roshar, but Roshar is also the system itself.
The physical Rosharan system is absolutely fascinating, and it's possible that we and the fan community are reading too much into the physical star map of Roshar, but it's also possible that we're not.
We're not reading enough into the star map. We should dig deeper into it.
There might be way more clues in that map than we're even thinking of.
Let's begin with the gas giants, because it is the gas giants and their number, 10 of them, that gives us so much emphasis on the number 10 on Roshar.
Yes, there is an auspicious number of gas giants in the outer rings of this system. Obviously, there's 10 of them. They don't actually have names, at least at this point. They are simply numbered 1 through 10. Remember that all of their numbers correspond to heralds as well. For example, their number 1 is yes, like Yesrian.
And that would line up with what we are going to bring in later and the more theorizing, where everything that we see in the Rosharan system is a reflection and mirroring something that we see on the herald level or the Knights Radiant level or the just interpersonal level.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of like Greek mythology where all of, the planets were named after their various gods and heroes. But it does make you just wonder a little bit about this Rosharan system. When we get into the inner rings of the system,
because there is an asteroid belt, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So that's the dividing line, much like we have an asteroid belt after Mars. In the Rosharan system, there's an asteroid belt and then the 3 interior planets.
Yes, and we're pretty familiar with those 3. We've got Ashen, which is the closest to the sun, Roshar, and then Braze.
Diving further down the celestial rabbit hole, we have Roshar and its 3 moons. This is obviously what we're going to be talking about a lot today. The 3 moons are named Solace, Noman, and Mishim.
Yes.
What I think is going to attract a lot of theorizing and interest from the Cosmere aware, or even just the Roshar aware, is that the color of each moon is also seemingly corresponding
to be significant
to our shards on Roshar: cultivation, honor, and odium.
Yes. And I guess we should just back up slightly and say that the 3 planets, Ashen, Roshar, Braze, clearly correspond to at least the mythology in the Vorin religion, where you have the Tranquiline Halls, where humans are originally from and where they will go back to, aka Ashen. And then Roshar, obviously their planet, and Braze, which is also damnation.
It is so important to remember those religious connotations and the historical importance of all of these things. And that is also what makes these individual parables so meaningful, and how we talked about last episode, how the parables might not all be from Hoid, might not even be from Roshar, and can be and possibly are, interrelated across the Cosmere. So I believe that's kind of a good setup of the context of the celestial map of the Rosharan system.
Yeah. So those 3 moons, let's just differentiate them a tiny bit, because we are going to be talking about them and their differences throughout this story. Salas is the first moon, and the moons all rise and set in the same exact order every night. So Salas is the first. It is the smallest moon, and it is a violet color. And then we have Noman, which is the middle moon, and it is a bright pale blue. And then we have Mishim, which is kind of in the middle. It's smaller than Noman. It travels the slowest across the sky, and it is a green color.
Clearly, this is what we were talking about, lining up with the shards. The individual colors of the shards reflect that, with odium being violet or purple, honor being blue, cultivation being green. The similarities may continue as we tell this story and as we go on, but I wanted to take a quick aside and actually mention the Shin's mythology about these moons, because
there are different sets of mythologies on the planet around the moons.
Very similar to our own moon, which has an endless supply of different stories,
personifications to it, etc.
The Shin specifically refer to the moon as 3 sisters, and the birth order is reflected in what you just said, with Salas being the oldest sister, Noman the middle, Mishim being the youngest sister. That, of course, doesn't perfectly line up with our idea that these are the shards, because we know that vessels are different than sisters, or that's not the relationship.
I thought that was interesting, because I feel like we would expect the Shin to have the most accurate mythology around them, but in this circumstance, it seems at least like maybe they do not. There are some other thoughts from different cultures on Roshar. For example, in Nitanatan, Noman is considered to be male, and the Singer culture actually calls Noman Honor's moon. So they're very direct about this.
When it comes to the story of the moon and where all the wild theories begin, we actually get 2 different tellings of it, or references of it.
I completely forgot about this until I went back to take notes for this episode. I did not remember at all that Sigzil actually attempts to tell this story at the very beginning of Oathbringer and fails quite spectacularly. And then we hear it later from Hoid. I just thought that was like a funny little thing.
And it's a great example of interweaving and world building when you have characters that are referencing or talking about something, but their understanding is limited or different than someone like Hoid. And so you can see how the story is interpreted differently by different people. And the comparison then, of course, is what we like here and what we are going to do. What I would like to do is, take a lot of chunks from this individual scene and kind of play back and forth. Would you like to be Sigzil or Kaladin? Okay.
Quote, No. He took a deep breath. There had to be a way to explain this. What would his master do? Now, Sigzil said, scrambling at an idea. Everybody knows that Misham, the third moon, is the most clever and wily of the moons.
All right. And this is relevant. Why?
Because of a story, Sigzil said. Hush. Please listen, sir. You see, there are 3 moons, and the third moon is the cleverest, and she doesn't want to be in the sky, sir. She wants to escape. So one night she tricked the queen of the Natan people. This was a long time ago, so they were still around. They're still around now, but they were more around then, sir. And the moon tricked her, and they traded places until they stopped, and now the Natan people have blue skin. Does that make sense?
Kaladin blinked. I have no idea what you just said.
Well, Sigzil said, it's obviously fanciful, not the real reason that the Natan people have blue skin, and,
It was supposed to explain something?
It was about responsibility, but he had not really explained it well, end quote.
Now, right there, not only do we get a exploration of Sigzil and kind of more about his character, but we also get what he takes out of the story and what he, while stumbling, thought was important enough to tell, or I guess Brandon thought was important enough to tell through Sigzil. And I think that kind of the key takeaways for me, let me know if you saw anything else, was the focus on the third moon, the cleverest of the moons is what he called her. Then a concept of wanting to escape the sky or escape heaven. Really important. And a trick of some type that involved the queen of the Nanatan people.
Yeah. I think also the concept that this is seen as a story of how the Natan people got their blue skin, which is, the sort of moral of the story or the explanatory reason for the story is something that we've talked about a lot with these parables. So I think that's sort of something to note here. And then I thought it was also interesting to hear more directly, again, like a moral of the story, that this story is supposed to be about responsibility, or at least that Sigzil sees it as a story about responsibility, which I found very interesting. And I think it's interesting just to see Sigzil tell these same stories as Hoid, because Sigzil's personality is so different than Hoid's, and he's Azish, so he has a bit of that bureaucrat in him. And I think he tells the story very much in that way of like fact, moral of the story. Whereas Hoid is much more artistic and interpretive.
And has said specifically multiple times, like, I'm not going to tell you the meaning of the story.
Exactly.
The meaning is for you. And Sigzil's only purpose is like, fact, until we can get to the moral of the story, which I didn't do that well.
And we'll talk a little bit more about the story in detail. But I do think it says something about Sigzil that he chooses to interpret this as a story about responsibility. That like, well, this is really the story about why the moon needs to do their job correctly. Because if you shirk your job, something bad is going to happen, which is not the moral that I would take from this story.
I do think that's very interesting in the different morals that you can take from this story, because if we're saying from Sigzil's perspective, who's the one who is supposed to be responsible? Because depending on how far you want to go and reading into this story that we hear, there could be a lot of different people who are not being responsible. Yeah. And I think that the question deepens when then we start to apply it to the big Cosmere aspects and the shards themselves. Let's explain the story again, but this time from Hoid's perspective. Yes,
let's get a little bit more in detail. And so far in these parable episodes, we've not been detailing the stories very much. But we're going to on this one just because so many of the details are important and we will be talking about them. So this is Oathbringer chapter 67. If you want to read the full thing for yourself, go for it. We'll start the way Hoid starts, which is, quote, Everyone knows that Misham is the cleverest of the 3 moons. Though her sister and brother are content to reign in the sky, gracing the lands below with their light, Misham is always looking for a chance to escape her duty." End quote.
And there we see the similarities between the stories kind of very clearly laid out.
Yes.
Escape her duty, escape the sky, and always this concept of the cleverest of the 3 moons.
Yes. Then we shift to Queen Sa of Netanatan, and she is supposed to be a great architect. She's built these beautiful tall towers in Netanatan, and Misham, as she comes across the sky one night, says, quote, "Almost they reached my domain," Misham called. "One wonders if you are trying to obtain it." End quote.
This to me jumped out as the mythology from our own history about the Tower of Babel.
Absolutely.
The tower growing too tall to the sky above, the heavens above, and then a curse coming out of that Tower of Babel.
A concept of like human hubris and like trying to raise oneself to the level of a deity, and that being sort of frowned upon.
Of course, being punished for how dare you try to come up here where you don't belong.
Yeah, so that's kind of the vibe I get from this beginning with Misham, as she's kind of like, nice towers, but in sort of a backhanded way where she's like, kind of, be careful what you wish for.
And I think the concept when it comes to the cleverest, we will see that Misham is dishing out compliments that she knows will feed the ego of Queen Sa, and then also then going to reverse it in the next pattern and kind of take away that same thing. Your tower looks so great, but let's go to the next little section.
Yeah, so she continually gives Queen Sa compliments, and then she also talks about how wonderful it is to be a moon, basically, and is like, I get to see all of the stars up close. They're so beautiful. I get to see star spren.
And like, you wouldn't understand it because you're a human who belongs on Earth, and I'm a moon who belongs in the sky. You just wouldn't get it how pretty everything is up here.
But she does try to lure her in, like, but we could switch places. And Queen Sa kind of puts on this facade of piety. She keeps saying, oh, no. I am just a lowly human. I couldn't possibly. I'm a devout person. It's only for the moons to be in the sky. And then eventually, as you said, Misham tries a different tactic. And she tells Queen Sa, oh, you know what I saw from way up here? There's a problem with the roof on one of your towers.
Your tower is about to collapse.
Yeah.
You need to get up here real quick to check it out.
And the queen's vanity gets the better of her, supposedly, anyway. And so she's like, okay, I'll do it. We'll switch places. I will be really, really good. I'm not going to enjoy any of those divine sights that are only meant for celestial beings. And so they switch places. Misham has a great time enjoying being a human, enjoys all of the human pleasures.
Well, and right before she leaves and goes enjoys those human pleasures, she does tell Queen Sa specifically, oh, also don't let my siblings know that you are up here. It's just going to be our little secret. Like, don't let anybody know.
One night only.
Exactly. And then she goes down to Earth and just starts rocking it.
Yeah,
this
she's
is just like
partying
thumping,
really hard.
Yes. Seemingly has a real great time. Then, into the night, rolling around, those moons got to go home.
Well, she misses it. She's partying so hard that she misses the moon set. So she has sort of a Cinderella turns into a pumpkin scenario, goes back up to the tower and is like, oh, dang it, the moon has already set. I can't switch back now. So she's stuck on Earth, and the queen is stuck as a moon. And so Misham spends the whole day just like, oh my God, now she's going to spend all of this time with my siblings. They're definitely going to find her out. We're going to be in trouble. And so the next night when Misham comes to the tower and the queen rises as the moon and they get to chat, the queen tells her, yeah, you know what? They did. They found me out. They knew right away I wasn't you, but it was cool.
They were really nice about it.
Yeah. Like, we got along. We hung out the whole time and it was great.
This is where the horror of the story begins to be made clear, because we thought, things were going one direction. We thought we knew how the story was going to end. And then Misham has the realization of like, wait, what do you mean it was great? Because I want to go back up there now.
Like I'm ready. I'm tired of being a human. Get me back to my moon job.
Yeah, she had one day in the light and it was just like, oh, this is not as great. That is very much what happens after a night of partying, folks. You go to the same place in the middle of the day to pick up your car and you're just like, oh no. That's what happened to Misham. And Basically. She wanted to get back up in the celestial wonderland. And now Queen Sal's like, you know what? I like it up here.
Actually,
I think I'll stay.
This is great. And so Misham calls their oath back into mind and is like, hey, dude, you told me that you weren't going to enjoy all of those divine things. So you broke your word and we have to switch back. And Sa is a woman of her word. And so she switches back with Misham. And then we get this quote, though just before she set, Misham heard a song.
Oddly, Wit added a small line of blue smoke to the brazier.
It was a song of laughter, of beauty, a song Misham had never heard, end quote. It took her a long time to understand that song, until months later, she passed in the sky at night and saw the queen in the tower again, holding a child with skin that was faintly blue. They did not speak, but Misham knew. The queen had tricked her. Sa had wanted to spend one day in the heavens to know Nomon for a night. She had given birth to a son with pale blue skin, the color of Nomon himself, a son born of the gods, who would lead her people to glory, a son who bore the mantle of the heavens, end quote.
A son who bore the mantle of the heavens.
Yeah.
And now we are left with all of the mystery of this story. Because, yes, we have the general explanation. Like, this is the mythological explanation for why these people have blue skin.
Yeah.
But then we have several questions along several different levels.
Ooh, I do also want to add that Hoid actually ends the story by saying that Misham learns her lesson from this scenario. She never leaves the sky again. And she also, quote, comes to know the one thing that before only mortals had known, loss, end quote. And I thought that was just very interesting and will start to come into play if we're thinking about this as Misham, the moon, is sort of a stand-in for cultivation.
That is, of course, the big connection. If these three moons are talking about or referencing the three shards and their colors all match for that
as
specific...
they surely seem to be.
It definitely seems that way. And if that's the case, then what I think we can infer, what the bigger or the underlying message is that there was some type of extreme loss and a betrayal among those three beings.
Yeah, it's like, is this a story about Honor having a baby with a human woman?
The affair that broke Honor.
As we have postulated on this podcast in the past, is that what this is about?
Referencing.
Yeah.
I think that there are several questions, and the first one comes from Shallan. Hoid is telling the story to Shallan, and she says, quote, eventually, only Shallan stood before him. Wit smiled at her. Why that story? She asked. Why now?
I don't give meanings, child, he said. You should know that by now. I just tell the tale, end quote.
In his very Hoid-like fashion of never giving an answer. But we have other perspectives on Roshar as an origin story.
Yeah, this was something surprising that I learned while I was researching for this episode, because we actually have a word of Brandon about the origin of the Natan people, which is that they are a result of humans and Sia-Amians having children together. And just as a quick reminder, the Sia-Amians are the ones that have slightly blue skin, like they're very, very pale white, bluish, and then they have deep blue nails, and they have crystalline blue eyes, plus the ability to change their form at will, and their shadows fall the wrong way, supposedly due to a connection to the cognitive realm. So Sia-Amians, super weird. They apparently had children with humans and created the Natan people.
Okay, so that's from a word of Brandon,
Yeah.
which makes me think that in story, Sigzil is the most correct one, that this is not actually the real reason that the Natan people have blue skin. And he's like, this is mainly metaphorical. And he's correct. It is mainly metaphorical for that specific purpose. It's probably not the beginning of the genetic reason that the Natan people have blue skin.
Yeah.
And
but then I was like, well, then is this a story about the origin of the Sia-Amians who also have like bluish skin?
Yeah, if it's really just like the origin story.
Yeah, because obviously there was the Scourge of Amia, and so Amians aren't really around anymore. So maybe they like switched the meaning to make more sense with a people that is still around. And
would be the, descendants of those Sia-Amians.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good idea in a way that it keeps Brandon's running concept of like the history, is coming from stories that are probably, adaptations and morphine
continually
around,
change.
Yes, all over incredible amounts of time. And so that's definitely interesting. I like the idea that a actual creation between a shard and a human, or between a shard and a mortal, would result in something slightly more magical than just blue skin.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, like, a connection to the cognitive realm where your shadow is always going backwards, that
would
makes some sense.
Make more sense. It does seem like if a shard and a human were going to have a child, like that child would have cooler powers, I would hope, rather than just like being blue skinned. So there's that. I also kind of went down this rabbit hole that there's a theory that Sia-Amians and then also the Natan people are the result of humans and Spren mating, which is also like an explanation for why Sia-Amians would be partially in the cognitive realm. And they kind of look like Honor Spren, all like pale bluey. So there's just another thought.
Yeah, and I really like the idea that these things might actually still be linked in what if your theory that you just postulated is correct, that Sia-Amians are the result of a mix between Spren and mortals. But the reason that the Honor Spren, let's just pretend in this instance because they're blue, the reason that the Honor Spren felt that that was okay to do and an honorable thing to do is because of what happened in our story. The actual Honor mated with a human and
created something else, and then the Spren mated and created Sia-Amians.
Yes, that would be the way to like keep it connected. Maybe there is like a one-off type of thing, or I'm still not 100% on board with like how did Spren come into existence? How did the sentient, more advanced Spren come into existence? Maybe that was probably too far of speculation, but like maybe that is an origin story that Hoid would be interested in telling as well. Is like, where do the sapient Spren come from?
Yeah.
But I just want to constantly be connecting it back to what if this is the Shards? Because that's the biggest theory around this story.
Of course.
And I think that it answers a lot of the kind of subtle hints and questions that we've had about what happened to the Shards, why is cultivation, seemingly in hiding, and we, in Rhythm of War, got a lot more odium, but we still don't know about the honor and cultivation of it all.
Well, yeah, we don't know what happened to cause Honor to go mad, which we've heard from several different sources that near the end, Honor was acting erratically and sort of not his normal self. There are many reasons that could have happened, but we don't really know why. And so this story is theorized as an explanation for that, because the thought is potentially Honor had an affair with a
queen
human.
saw.
Sure, with the queen, whoever that was. And therefore we have the son of Tanavast line, which is the queen's child, explanation for Kaladin. And then this is also why Misham / cultivation would feel that big sense of loss at the end. And then, as we stated in previous podcast episodes, this could be an explanation for why and how Honor would go mad, with his oaths being at odds with his shard intent.
Okay, you just threw like 5 different theories all down at once.
Yeah,
and
that's why people love this parable, because they're like, great, I can throw all of the theories in, and this parable is an explanation for all of them.
Exactly. It's the lizard people of conspiracy theories. It's just whatever you want it to be. And in this case, the different things that you just thrown out, I want to go through like one by one. I love the idea that this explains Honor's madness, the conflict between the shard intent and his actions.
Yeah, I think it's the best explanation, or like most compelling explanation that I've heard for the downfall of Honor.
Of course, that then has multiple, like a snowball cascading effects. The dominoes have been knocked over by Honor, and then it's something that seemingly affects the Spren, the Honor Spren, specifically, and the heralds as well. I feel like whatever is happening to our heralds and their madness that they're dealing with would only be magnified if Honor was dealing with something similar. Like I
didn't really make, because then after Honor is shattered, wouldn't they not be crazy anymore?
I am not saying that it's a direct causation. I'm just saying that the example that we have more information about, a magical madness that is specifically caused by like an inversion of your intent or your desire, I feel like Honors would only be more powerful, more potent.
Sure.
And if it is a version like that, then clearly it would impact everything around him, and he is connected to everything. And so you'd get this just like ripple effect of his negative inversion of Honor. And I also think it's a good explanation for cultivation's seeming lack of direct involvement in the events that have led up to the Stormlight Archive.
Why would this explain that?
Well, because if there was a betrayal, and we see this as Honor and Cultivation were a romantic couple, there was an intruder in Odium who they maybe both stood against for a long time, deepening their bond. But then a lowly human comes up one night and seduces Honor, giving it like the most...
You think Cultivation is just abandoning humanity because of this slight?
Of course, the only reason that everything seemingly happened from Cultivation's perspective would be y'all got what you deserved. Like, you came up, you messed up my home. You humans, you're homebreakers. You've wrecked my house. And I think the impact of the, like, Honor's version is madness, and Cultivation's version is loss, or something akin to
I think it would make sense that Hoid like makes a point to say that Misham experiences loss, and that would line up with Cultivation and a romantic relationship being damaged in some way. I don't think it has anything to do with whatever she's doing now.
That's totally fair. I am not 100% there. This is the crazy theory section, because as you said, anytime someone has a theory, they can just latch it on to whatever idea that they want.
So then the other big one that people love for this story is the whole Son of Tanavast business, and seeing this as proof or an explanation for Kaladin's existence as the capital S, son, capital T of Tanavast.
That is definitely how I felt for a long time. And it was, to me, the explainer, indirect though it may be. But this to me was like the glaring evidence.
Yeah,
we've
talked about it so much.
Of just, yes, clearly Kaladin is the son of Tanavast. Now, what I find interesting upon rereading this story and the connection more to the Siaamians, the Natan people, I'm less convinced upon rereading that this has anything to do with Kaladin.
Yeah, agreed. That was kind of the one thing that I came away with after researching for this episode was like, it does have a lot of super interesting stuff and theories packed in there, but I don't actually think they have anything to do with Kaladin being the son of Tanavast. First of all, the line of Tanavast, I feel like would still be Siaamians because they have blue skin. They would have, like weird special powers. That just makes way more sense to me than like, well, Tanavast had an affair and then they're basically normal humans that are slightly special all the way down until Kaladin.
That are slightly special all the way down into Kaladin. Yeah, that's kind of the thing is like, if Kaladin is quote unquote capital S special, then every single one of his ancestors would also be capital S special. There's no way you could like skip everyone.
If anything else, he would be the least special because the bloodline has been diluted.
That's always the problem with bloodlines as they go. But I think that this goes hand in hand with a word of Brandon that was always the counterpoint to the Kaladin is the son of Tanavast theory. So like whenever someone like me comes along and is like, Kaladin's the son of Tanavast, then the counterpoint is always this word of Brandon. Now when we apply it to the story, I think there's maybe a broader connection here that we're missing, that it's both obvious and not as special with a capital S as we want it to be. So let's read this word of Brandon, the question about Kaladin's bloodline, and Brandon says, quote, "One thing I wanted to be very careful about in writing the Stormlight books is to stray away from people needing some kind of past or heritage to be special. It's okay for this to be for some characters, but it becomes a crutch. So your answer is no. He doesn't have much secret to his heritage, though his mother grew up wealthy for a Dark Eyes, and that's a little odd." End quote.
I knew you were going to love that word of Brandon because you hate bloodline specialness.
I do hate bloodline specialness. And even when I was saying, I think that Kaladin is the son of Tanavast.
Yeah, you were always like, I don't want it to be this, but I think that it is.
And so here is my point. And this is like how everyone can coexist happily in the world. All your theories can be one theory. What I think Brandon could be saying with this quote and how that could still apply when it comes to a lineage is that there was a connection from shard to mortal that did lead to a specific individual who then went out into the world. And by the point of the Stormlight Archive, that could be incredibly diffused throughout the population, where many people, including Dalinar, including lines unconnected to Kaladin, but like a large percentage of people
are in some way like descended from Tanavast.
Yes. And that while the Stormfather would be able to pick out that connection because of like, you know, if the Natan people are blue enough for everyone to see, maybe Kaladin is just like a twinkle of blue, just a dot of blue. And that is a way that the Stormfather can see that.
He is not really any more special than anyone else, basically.
Yes. That this may be still a connection to the original line of Tanavast, but it is not in the way that like Aragorn is the king because he is the direct descendant of Isildur. Like that is not the same thing that we are seeing here. It's just like, Yeah, like all y'all are connected, you weirdos. Stop fighting.
Yeah, I like that. The more like there's a little bit of God in everyone type thought. I've seen some theories online that perhaps there is a difference between the power of honor having a child and Tanavast, like the vessel human, having a child, and that this is a story about the former and that Kaladin is the product of the latter.
Oh, so there's even more division.
So there's
betrayal.
A thought to give you Kaladin, son of Tanavast, groupies hope out there.
It's a cool band name. Like, I might be a groupie for that band. What I do find interesting about this possibility is that, in a way similar to the end of Mistborn, when like 1/16 of the army and the population was able to do a specific thing, that maybe there will be some connection that's more like that there is a cross-section of maybe at this point like all of our characters. That would be cool. I don't know if it would cross the singer line as well, but I would like it to. But like, you know, the Horn Eaters and the people from all across Roshar have this connection that is, you know, some percentage of them are of the lineage of Tanavast.
I mean, yeah, wouldn't that just be everyone?
It's so hard to tell because it could be everyone over a long enough period of time.
Yeah.
That's basically where humans are. If we look at our own genetic history, I think they have identified like 16 or so mitochondrial Eves are what they are called. You know, the Adam and Eve story. And that we have
common ancestors.
Exactly. Because there just didn't used to be that many humans around, and then life was really, really hard for a very long time. And so we've whittled away. But I don't know if we're on the same time scale, because for humans, that's taken 200,000 years, give or take. And the humans on Roshar have only been there for 10,000 years or less, or around that.
Yeah.
So it's a way different time scale.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm coming away from this story now just much less on the son of Tanavast situation, and I find this a satisfying explanation for the Amiens.
And you've always loved the Amiens.
I have always loved
your
the
mystery
Amiens.
that is
They're so interesting.
They are.
Like, why
don't we have stories from their perspective?
Yeah, it's just so much more interesting than, to me anyway, than like a lot of the other things that get a lot of airtime in Cosmere circles. Like, let's talk about the Amiens more. WTF is happening here?
It would be a great backdoor explanation or introduction to the Amiens, because we've seen them in the novellas. We've seen them in a
We've really only
here.
see the one, Axes the Collector, way back in, I think, Way of Kings.
But we have the potential and possibility that they become a significant player as the battle for Roshar gets into the really important phase. At some point, we feel like the Amiens have to step up in whatever capacity they currently exist in. Maybe that's not as good as they once were, and they're kind of in hiding. That's what it seems like they've been. But we also know that the power of the Amiens, of both types of Amiens, is really, really interesting. And as you know, a member of Roshar, they're going to care what's happening on the planet if everyone is fighting.
Theoretically. Maybe they're just waiting for everyone else to get wiped out so they can, like, have their land again.
Now, the unspoken, or the left unspoken part of this theory of the three moons is, of course, that third moon. There is an odium
Solace.
that we're leaving out of this entire equation. Now, in some of the stories, Solace is said to be female, not lining up with our vessel.
Right.
But
yeah, I think actually all of them that we know of anyway have referred to that moon as a female.
Only Nomen has ever been referred to as male.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I find that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We clearly have the knowledge that Reza is male. Like, he is not presenting any other way. He's always presented as very male, and the vessel as male. Now, odium, the power, is not anything. It's genderless. But I do find that while we have this story of the three sisters and kind of coexisting around Roshar, there's not a lot of emphasis on the three actually interacting.
Yeah, really the only thing that Salas does in the story as Hoid tells it is I think it like rises at one point, and it rises because it's the first one. Mm-hmm. So it rises. It doesn't say anything to Misham as she is on Earth, like, oh no, did they notice? And the first moon rises, says nothing. And that's like it.
The involvement of Salas in the story.
Yeah, it's just like Salas chose not to say anything to Misham, even though clearly she knew, because the queen says, like, yeah, they knew me right away and we hung out all night.
Now, if I am of the perspective that this story is all about the three shards, perhaps Odium used this moment of weakness between honor and cultivation to advance his plots for
right. I mean,
Roshar.
It would be one of those things where, like, he doesn't have to do anything. He can just stand back and let them destroy themselves.
That's exactly. And you could definitely see Reza making that argument in some past event, because he was still kind of making those arguments in the most recent, which led to Odium tearing him apart and putting Nightblood right in front of his heart. But I think that definitely could have been the cunning aspect of Reza that we hear sometimes when he's referenced by Hoid, is, he's kind of a manipulator, or one who is able to make moves when they need to be made. And if you saw your
and sometimes,
enemies,
your move is inaction.
Exactly. And you just let them fight it out. You let cultivation be all hurt and experience the loss and like retract and pull away, go into the forest, I have this entire sub-theory that if this happened early enough in the Rosharian timeline, then maybe all of the attempts after for the shards to create like different children or, subversions of themselves is somehow a reflection of this moment, this betrayal. Stay with me. What if this betrayal, the creation of the Sia Amiens, let's just go with that. The creation of the Sia Amiens happened, and then it was only able to happen. It was only able to produce offspring because it was with a human. And the only way that the shards can do something similar is through magic. Yeah. They can't actually have children of their own,
right?
Because of
that are
their
like
greatness.
Physical entities.
Yes. And so instead, they create things like the Night Watcher. They create things like the Heralds. They do all of these different manipulations of magic to kind of replicate the great betrayal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that you could say as a child, again, at least as far as we know right now, is the sibling, obviously, which is the product of intermingling investiture of cultivation and honor. We've talked about how weird it is that their name is the sibling when seemingly they have no siblings. They are just the child.
Exactly. So I'm kind of piggybacking off of that concept, but that she is a sibling.
I know, but like we've talked about before, the Night Watcher is different because it's only of cultivation. The Heralds are different. Like they're not really what I would call children.
Because they can't create children. The closest they can get is the sibling. But they tried a bunch of other things. They tried the maid, which then became unmade. They tried the Heralds. They tried Night Watcher. But they are trying sometimes independently, like cultivation creates the Night Watcher by herself.
Yeah.
But that is because she wants to have a child and can't do that with honor in the way that he was able to do it with the Queen Sa of the past.
Okay.
That's not necessarily a theory that I believe, but that's the craziest thing that I could possibly connect, is that like literally everything is because
it's in there. I mean, that's the thing about this story, is like you can really wrap up a lot of stuff in here.
So you can explain whatever you would like through the moon story. Do so. If it is why you failed your last test in high school or college, that's because of the moon story. If it is the reason for all of the desolations, moon story. Son of Tanavas, Moon Story. Everything is the Moon Story. So go ahead, wrap all of your different conspiracies up into one, and you can just summarize it to us just like Moon Story.
But really, do tell us what theories you have about this story. Tell us your thoughts about the Natan people, the Siaamians, the Son of Tanavas, the Honor cheating on cultivation, just all of it. Give us your thoughts. Like I said, I am leaving this slightly more confused than I started with because there's so many threads that get tied up here. And either help me get out of the web or just join me in the web.
Exactly. Confusion loves company, and you are welcome to join us in this web of confusion on any of your local social media sites. Your Twitters, your Reddits, your Facebooks. Even got a Patreon. You can come over and join if you would like some more nonsense, as we are currently talking about the Skyward Flight series.
Which has been so much fun.
It really has been a great reread. The launch of Cytonic is happening either very near the release of this episode or after this episode has aired. Go out and check that. It is not Cosmere related, but it is great. Brooke, can you take us away?
Until next time. Life before death.
Strength before weakness.
Journey before destination.